Welcome to ExcelBerry. In this video, you will learn all you need to know about a pivot table. A pivot table is a tool in Microsoft Excel to help you to calculate, summarize, and analyze data. So let's say you have thousands or millions of rows with data, and then you can easily organize, summarize, or analyze this data, like this table here. So this is a pivot table where I summarize all the different berries by their quantity. So in this video, you'll learn all about the pivot table. So like I said, a pivot table is a powerful tool to calculate, summarize, and analyze data that lets you see comparisons, patterns, and trends in your data. And before you start to make your first pivot table, make sure that you've cleaned your data. So we want to see no totals, no subtotals, no empty cells if you can avoid it. And all the headings up here should have unique names, or maybe not always unique, but they should not be empty, because then you can't make the pivot table. So now we have good data. Let's make our pivot table. You can stand in one of these cells if the data looks like this. Otherwise, you can also select the cells that you want to be in your pivot table. Then we go to the Insert tab up here in the ribbon and press on Pivot Table. Now we have some options. The first one is, are you sure that these are the cells, your array that you want to be in your pivot table? Yes, I'm sure. Where do you want to put it? Do you want Excel to make a new sheet, or do you want to place it somewhere? And if you place on existing worksheet, where do you want to place it? And let's skip data model. That's for power pivots, another more advanced video. So where do we want to put it? So here we can select a cell in the sheet that we're in, or we can place it somewhere else. So let's place it here in this sheet here. Now we have our pivot table, and what you'll see is that two new tabs appears in the ribbon when you stand in the pivot table. So now you can't see them. Let's stand in the pivot table, and now you have two more tabs up here. The first one, design, is only about designing, making it look better. That's not something you use most of the time, but you will rather use the pivot table analyze. So here's the tools that you can use for your pivot table. For example, if you add rows to your data, you need to change the data source. Here, you add more rows. Otherwise, you'll have a pivot table that doesn't match all your data. Then you need to change this here. You also have pivot chart. There are charts of your pivot table, and they are even better than the regular charts. So try these out. And also here to the right, you have different items to be shown. And here you have the field list. And here you can see when I press on it that the pivot table fields here to the right will appear and disappear. And this field here is where you will make and set up your pivot table. All the columns that you have in your data, so the heading will be listed here. So we had in the data, we had berries, company, country, quantity. So they will be listed here. And you have four areas down here where you drag one of the headings to. And the columns and rows means that all the unique items in one of the columns will be listed either as different rows or different columns. So let's place the berries here to the rows. You'll see that all the unique berries, the unique names in that column, will be listed in different rows. If we were to put it into columns, they would be into different columns. And then values is the data that you want to see. So in this case, we wanted to see the quantities for the berries. So the quantities are the data. And then the fourth box is filters. And here you can drag and drop, for example, company, and a filter above the pivot table will come, and it works like a regular filter. So let's say you only want to see the company quotes. Then you press on it and press on OK. So now you'll see that the berries and the quantities will only be for quotes. And here you can select multiple items if you want to. But let's say you want to have companies in both rows and as a filter, let's put it here. Then it's not that easy to make filters. So what I suggest instead is that you use a slicer. Slicer works as a filter, but it's easier to use. So you stand in your pivot table, go to the pivot table analyze, and then press on insert slicer up here. So here you will have all the different columns once again, and we can press on, for example, country this time and add a slicer. So this is a slicer, filter, name it whatever you want. And then you could press on one of the items to now only list the berries and the companies that's in France. If you want to have a multi-select, you press on this one before, and then like this, or you hold the control button. And then you can remove the filters by pressing on this one here. And with the slicer, if you right click on it, you have report connections, meaning that if you have multiple pivot tables to the same data, you can have one slicer that affects multiple pivot tables. But that's a bit advanced perhaps. Here in our pivot table, you saw that I dragged and dropped first berries and then companies into the box rows. That means that first up here, we will see the berry and then all the companies for that berry, and then the next berry and then all the companies there. So here we need to make sure we have the right level that we want. So we can change companies to be above berries. Then we will have the company first and then the berries for that company. So make sure you drag and drop them for how you want to see them. And one good to know thing is that right now you have sum of quantity, and you can see that here in the values box that you have sum of quantities. If you press on it and go to value field settings, you can change the sum to instead be, for example, count, average, max, min, or product. So if you want to count how many rows of blackberries you have, then you select count instead. And you can also change the name. That's sum of quantity. You can change this to be something else if you want to. And then you can press on OK. And another way to do this, instead of going here to the value section, press on it, value field settings, you can double click on the heading. So double click here and then the box will appear. That is pretty much what a pivot table is and how you make one, and some tips and tricks for it. And that's all I wanted to show you in this video. Subscribe if you want to learn even more in Excel, and like this video if you learned something, and go my course on excelberry.com. Thank you.